Okay, I think I will go ahead and get started. We still have people getting on, but if they get on in the next couple minutes, that should be fine. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar on AP classes and exams, what to expect and how to prepare. Thank you so much for joining us. I will go briefly over our agenda and introduce our panelists, and then we'll get underway. Tonight, or actually, let me go through our little introduction to 7EDU. So for any of you who might be new to 7EDU, we are located in the heart of Silicon Valley. And 7EDU is a leading education tech company committed to helping students reach their potential. We believe in the philosophy of study smarter, not harder. With a combination of innovative technology and pedagogy, we customize strategies for each student so they can foster their intellectual curiosity and academic aptitude. Our students have gained admission to top colleges, including Harvard, Columbia, MIT, Duke, Stanford, and many others. And tonight we have a great set of panelists who are going to be speaking to you. Beginning with Dr. Yan. She is a tenured college professor in engineering, a PhD in engineering, and postdoc in informatics from Stanford. We also have Mr. Julian. He holds a BS in humanities and engineering, had a joint major in environmental engineering and science, technology, society. And Mr. Julian graduated from MIT. Mr. Kyle holds a BS and Masters of Education in Secondary English Language Arts Education from the University of Central Florida. He's also been an AP exam scorer. And finally, Mr. David holds a BA in History from California State University and has more than 20 years of experience teaching social studies. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I will hand this over to Dr. Yan, if you're able to take control of the screen.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for the introduction. Okay, also thank you all the parents and the students for spending the time coming to our seminar tonight. So I assume the parent students tonight are currently high school students, or maybe going for high school, and you want to know about AP classes. However, some students have already signed up for AP classes, but today we want to share our experience and the things that we know about AP. Okay, and then so I'm pretty sure that this is a time that is worth spent, and you will gain a lot from our panelists today. So first of all, for students who have not taken AP classes or are considering taking AP classes, let's discuss the benefit of taking AP classes. And so for one thing, I think AP classes will help students boost your GPA, of course, if you do well, right? And then that is a way to demonstrate that your knowledge, your in-depth knowledge in a certain field. Actually, AP tests probably can be considered as like standard tests as SAT and ACT. However, AP classes usually are considered at the college level courses. And I think students who have taken AP classes can tell the workload from AP classes are higher than typical high school classes, other high school classes they have taken so far. And therefore, the extra effort that student has to spend doing well in those AP classes can help them stand out in college admissions, because that helps to offer a stronger academic profile on student application. And then in some cases, if you do well, especially if you get 4 or 5, some of the courses that can be that can earn you some college credits, meaning that you can transfer those credits into your college credits, so that you don't have to take certain classes in college. Okay, now because the level of rigor and the challenges of those AP courses, students are better prepared for the challenges and the rigor at the college level. Also, I mentioned that taking AP classes really helps students demonstrate they have the in-depth knowledge of the subjects. Therefore, actually by studying those subjects, and then probably you can also have a better idea of that field, whether and then decide whether if that's really the field that you want to study in college. Okay, so I also want to ask our panelists whether they have anything to add on. Kaya, do you have anything to add on this? The benefits students can gain by taking AP classes?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello again for those of you. My name is Mr. Kyle Parker. So I've taught AP English language, literature. I teach in my school's international baccalaureate program. And I also work in the AP capstone program, which I'll probably get a chance to talk about a little bit tonight. And yeah, I find that one of the biggest real kind of comebacks that my students have, especially when they come back after they've graduated and they kind of talk about AP classes, is just especially as they get kind of in the upper levels of their secondary education in 11th and 12th grade, they really become very used to the rigorous workload, and they really feel that their academic skills kind of place them in a comfortable position. So especially like my AP capstone program, I have a ton of students that come back and say, a lot of my peers really struggle with writing 600, 700, 800 word papers. And I'm over here writing, I've written a 1,500 word to a 3,000 word paper, and they just feel a lot. There's struggles, of course, but they always feel a lot more comfortable than if they've just done kind of the regular honors or even dual enrollment route that I'll get to talk about in just a little bit.
Okay, how about David? Do you have anything to add?
Unmute my audio. Yeah, David Kelly here. I've been doing this teaching thing for about 2 decades now, and I tell you that when I think of the AP setting, in my AP experience has been in AP government, AP psychology, AP US history, AP world history, and AP Euro. So I've been doing this for a while, and I think besides the bullet points that I see in front of me, one of the biggest things that I see and why I would encourage my own daughter to go the AP route is to go ahead and develop her critical thinking skills. I think in the class, we really work on those analytical skills, learning how to contextualize and synthesize information. I know we do that in all of our classes, but I think it's just it can tend to go to a different level on working on those skills when they're younger. And I think those are beautiful skills to carry into life.
Thank you, David. How about Julian? Do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, so hello, my name is Julian Dobransky. Haven't been teaching for a couple of decades. I've barely been alive for a couple of decades, in fact. But I recently graduated MIT. I've been helping students with AP Physics, and I want to double down on the idea of you actually learn how to learn in these AP classes, and especially with some of the science ones where you have labs almost as often as you have homework every once in a while. You also learn how to work with other people in these sorts of settings. So there is a lot of individual work, and your grade and your AP test score is based on your individual work. But the amount of teamwork skills that you're able to build by working on these scientific principles in a lab setting is something that you'll take not only into college, but into work, into life, really.
Well, thank you, Julian. Yeah, so thank you for all the panelists. And I think we agree that it's not just for getting a good score. And actually, you will learn very valuable skills while taking those rigorous classes. And then, for example, critical thinking skill, and for science classes, you really will have to do labs for the AP science courses. Okay, and then actually, we have been asked by parents and the students about dual enrollments. Many high schools actually offer this opportunity of having students participating in the dual enrollments. So they asked us whether they should take the dual enrollment or the AP route. So I want to know some of our panelists, whether some panelists have something to say about this, whether the students should take dual enrollments or AP, or the pros and the cons between the two.
Yeah, this is absolutely an area I can chime in. So with the nature of the programs that I do at my school, like AP, IB, I have a lot of students that come to me and say, well, I'm thinking about this dual enrollment route as well. What are your kind of thoughts on that? this is kind of my hands on a few different things. So dual enrollment classes, if you have no kind of conception of them, are college level classes that students, while they're still in high school, in most instances, go to the actual colleges, take them. So sitting in an authentic, college class with a student from there. They're typically state or community colleges, though they can also, the classes themselves can be hosted at the actual high school, depending on the school. So I always give my students the conversation of, dual enrollment is one of those things that you kind of have to know what your path is and what you're wanting to do. If a student is wanting to start at a local community college or state university, so like, for example, I'm based in Florida, and we have a program called Direct Connect where students can do 2 years at SSC or Seminole State College, and they can transfer at any major, Florida University, University of Florida, University of Central Florida, so on and so forth. So if they're wanting to do that, they're already in the infrastructure. Their credits transfer, it's very, very easy. But for students that are really wanting to stay at that top elite level, they're the ones they want to apply to Stetson, they want to apply to Stanford, they want to apply to MIT. It's very much kind of this accepted ideal that a lot of these colleges will take AP credits, just due to the rigorous nature of them, but not all of these universities have to accept Seminole, Seminole Community College or Seminole State College's dual enrollment credits. And I always encourage my students to, whatever's their dream school is where they want to go. And anybody that's sitting in this webinar is free to do this right now, put into Google, University of Florida AP credits, and it'll pop up with exactly what you get for what exam and for what scores, so it's the kind of thing that you're not walking in with surprises, if you're wanting to take the AP route. And it really does help students stay competitive. Almost all of our top 10 every single year, they have a full AP schedule. They don't dual enroll, especially because depending on the state, your dual enrollment GPA does not affect your high school GPA. So I just ask my students up front about what their path is, but if they really are wanting to stay super, super competitive, I always find the AP route is definitely that thing that keeps both their GPA sharp, but as we were discussing, their intellect sharp as well.
Well, thank you, Kyle. And also one thing that I think student and parents need to remember is that if you do dual enrollments, then probably you will go to community college to take classes, and then you actually miss the opportunity of interacting with your high school peers, right? You only have so much time during high school. And if you spend maybe 1/3 of time outside your high school campus and attending classes at community college, and then probably you will miss that time that you could spend with your high school peers. And also, I know a lot of high school clubs have their meetings, maybe during lunchtime, and then usually attending the course at community college will have you force you to kind of miss the club activities, right? There are pros and cons. So if you think that you probably want to start with a community college, and of course you have advantage because that really saves you time and money. And if you later on transfer to a 4-year college. Okay, yeah, so basically each student needs to consider his or her own situation and then decide on whether you should participate in a dual enrollment or stick to the AP route, or maybe the IP route, depending on the curriculum that school is planning. Okay, so I think most of students here probably have not heard about SAT subject tests, which were discontinued in spring 2021. So before that, students, in addition to SAT and ACT, students could take SAT subjects to demonstrate their in-depth knowledge in certain subjects. And for example, students who really want to study engineering computer science, they will usually take SAT Math 2, SAT Physics. Students who want to study bio, they will take like bioengineering or like bio track or pre-med track. They will take SAT Biology and SAT Chemistry. But because those tests were no longer offered, it seems that the only way really students want to demonstrate in-depth knowledge is by taking more advanced courses, such as AP and IB courses. Yeah, so that's why we see a significant increase of the number of students taking AP tests in the last decade. Yeah, especially and after the discontinuation of SAT subject tests. Okay, and another question we have often received from parents and students is the differences between AP and honor level courses. If a student, the school is offering, for example, honor English or AP English, honor UR history and AP UR history, or honor science class. So what are differences between AP and honor level courses? So I will invite each of our panelists to go over this because our panelists are experts in their own fields. So can we start with David this time?
Yeah, I think when I think of the difference here on the AP side is what I would speak of. I think I would still say the rigor. I know honor is still honor, but there's just a different level when you get to that AP. And I think it's because we have some students that are motivated towards that college credit. And so the expectations that I put upon myself is that I really got to have a high bar for my students. And so I would say that's probably the biggest piece that I can think of, having taught both, is that, you know, just the level of, it's a college course. And I mean, I understand that, you know, they're you're high school students, but at the same time, it is a college course that you have the opportunity to get college credit for. So we treat it as such, whereas the honor level is just an accelerated class is kind of what I think of when I think of honors. And I think one other major difference would be just to understand the reading behind it. For in the social studies, especially that content knowledge that as far as reading it and developing those reading skills, those time management skills are something that I would say is a huge difference that I've seen for my students.
Okay, maybe the writing part as well, right? The composition part.
Oh yeah, yeah. So thank you. Yeah, I don't know how I left that one off the list. Thank you, Dr. Yan. Without a doubt, the expectation as far as the writing to go ahead and throw down a DBQ essay in you know an hour after analyzing documents and doing all those type of things. So the accelerated pace that we can teach those analytical writing skills is another major difference. So, and I think that's a great skill. I mean, if we can be learning that skill as we're a junior in high school to how to analyze, you know, 7 documents and then come up with a thesis and then, you know, support the evidence behind that, analyzing it and getting those complex understandings. And you can learn to do that in an hour at a high level when you're in a junior level course. I think you're accelerating your opportunity for success in life.
Yeah, I just talked to 2 students today, and then they both had struggles with their A-push class, and then the common struggle is the composition part. Yeah. Okay. How about Julian? Can you talk about the differences between the AP Science courses and honor science courses?
Probably one of the biggest differences is how well structured AP courses are compared to honors level courses. Now, I won't say that honors science classes aren't structured very well, but AP level courses have a very, very defined structure as to what you cover, when you cover it, what order it's covered in, and what you do in each chapter in order to really gain the mastery of the subjects that the AP course expects you to get. And so labs are typically scheduled. It's planned out what you're going to do ahead of time. You know what the curriculum looks like looking ahead. So if you wanted to look ahead and so you get a bit of a head start, you totally can. And it also makes it really, really easy to condense everything into the course in preparation for the actual AP exam. And so when it comes time to review everything right before the test, you know what you learned. You can go back and review anything that you needed to review. And in addition to that, at any point, if you do start to fall behind a bit, the course path that AP Science classes take is designed in such a way that you can almost learn 2 things at once. Not like very specifically, I'm going to study both of these things at the exact same time with 2 different laptops, but you can try and catch up on what you're struggling to understand while still beginning to get a hang of the basics of what comes next.
Yeah, just even for the science subjects and the AP tests have the composition components, the free response components. And actually every single AP test has the multiple choice and the free response section. I think a lot of STEM students, students who are probably strong in STEM may lack the ability of elaborating their thoughts. Yeah, so this is something that our like AP STEM courses teach instructors will really have to emphasize how to explain your thoughts we are not writing English, we're not writing history passages, but we really have to explain our thoughts very well using scientific terms. Yeah. Okay, how about Kyle? Yeah, honor English versus the AP English. What are the differences?
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk to my students about, the difference between the two, the biggest thing I talk about is the level of deconstruction that is done at the AP level versus the honors level. So to kind of really reiterate what Mr. Julian and Mr. David, have been saying, at the AP level, I tend to teach a lot of students that want to be engineers, they want to be mathematicians. And I always tell them the most valuable thing you can walk out of an AP English class with is the ability to deconstruct, to break down a text, whether it's prose, poetry, any of the sort, because that's essentially what college is. Even before the writing component, which I think is super, super valuable, that ability, as Mr. David was saying, to really, really have a composition and a well-done composition, in a structured time. I think one of the most valuable things that you can do is put down a difficult piece of writing in front of someone and say, you need to be able to break this thing down, because that's the main skill you'll utilize in college. It doesn't matter what your major is. You're going to be reading things that are difficult, and you have to be able to make sense of something that you may only have limited context for or limited understanding of, but to kind of draw that meaning out of it. And I find that is really, really big in the AP class, especially because, as Mr. Julian was saying, the nature of the courses, the nature of the exams. Like my English 4 honors class right now, there's no state exam, there's no structured, so I can implement my own things and do them, but without kind of this standard with which to hold. It's a very, very different type of class for a very, very different type of student. So definitely that ability to, I have people they wouldn't consider themselves to be English people, in quotes, all the time say, hey, look, I can read better because of this course. And even if I don't plan on doing anything with, in English, I feel more confident now that I can deconstruct a piece of writing.
Yeah, so I think in some AP courses are more rigorous than honor level courses. And in terms of workload, I think AP courses also requires more workload or more time from students. And so that's why we say that among the four-year college, four-year high school, students will probably have the heaviest workload during the junior year, because most students take their AP courses during the junior year, or they take most AP courses during a junior year. So for younger students, you need to mentally prepare if you will start taking AP classes in the near future. Okay. Okay, so our goal, for students, if you want to take AP courses, and then you will participate in the national AP test annually in May. During COVID, actually they offer 2 tests, one in May and one in June for students who had to miss the test due to whatever reason. But here is the most updated AP score distribution in 2022. I just put a few subjects here, and because the expertise from our panelists. And so, but if you just focus on the percentage of students getting 5 and 4, you can see the subjects we cover today tend to have low percentage of students getting 5 and 4, especially physics 1. So physics 1 historically is always the subject with the smallest percentage of students getting 5. And I think later on Julian will explain why that's the case. But then if you look at history subjects and the English subjects, and still pretty low, okay, and less than maybe 15%. Here, actually, I haven't had much chance to discuss the math, because there's no difference between honor math and AP math, because AP calculus, it just in terms of content, it's way above. It's a calculus. There's not equivalent honor calculus. So, but later on we will spend time going over the challenges in AP calculus. But here I just want to highlight, in case some parents actually catch this. So if you look at the calculus BC, we have more than 40% of students getting 5 in calculus BC. But I think this high number can be very misleading, making student parents think that this is an easy test to take. But in fact, it's pretty challenging, and much more challenging than calculus AB. The reason why you see such a high percentage of students getting 5 is because these students are much more prepared than the student taking calculus AB. It's the pool of the students taking the test. Yeah, I remember when we had SAT subject test, and we noticed a similar statistic. SAT math has two levels: SAT math 1, SAT math 2. If you look at percentage of students getting 800, the full mark in SAT math 2, it was about 40%. But then SAT math 1, the percentage of students getting 800 was below 20%. That's simply because the number of students taking SAT math 2 are better prepared than students taking SAT math 1. Okay. Yeah, so here's just some background information so that our student parents have some idea of how challenging those AP subjects are. If their goal is to get at least 4, okay, maybe ideally 5, but at least 4 in the AP tests. Okay, so the next main topic, actually probably the most important thing for today, is what are challenges of these AP subjects and how students should can best study for them, especially for not just for the course, but also for the main national test. Okay, so this time let's start with Kyle. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So AP English is kind of the odd one out here, since English classes are the AP English classes are skills based and not content based. There's no real necessarily studying of any kind of content. It's multiple choice of fresh text that the students have never seen before, and then 3 different essay types that are kind of covered through the year. So really, while there are, students can take, much like any standardized test, like the SAT, you can take multiple choice tests, you can learn the question types because they're standardized. So there's only so many different types, and you can learn the essay approaches. So much of that is done in class and really involves a presence to it. But I really find and tell my students this, that the single best way to study for like an AP English class is application. So like if we're going over this process of deconstructing a work of fiction, I'll tell students, hey, you know what? Pick your favorite show on Netflix, pick an episode, pick a scene. Can you use the language of this course to deconstruct that? I mean, it's obviously best to, do it on a piece of writing, but that first step becomes, can you really integrate the knowledge and the language of this? And I find that my students that get 4s and 5s can, because they can take any work of fiction that they've never seen before, or at least I've seen minimally, and they can kind of pick those pieces apart, when it comes to it. But, again, worst case scenario, essay practice, writing practice, being in class, obviously is a huge thing. Teaching seniors for AP classes, sometimes their attendance is a little back and forth. So just being present and being willing to apply the things that you're learning in class are the best ways that students can study for AP English.
Yeah, so Guy, I do have a question because the free response section, right? How do you get comments on student the compensation part? Do your students get like detailed feedback on how to, instead of just sending them a rubric? Because the reason I'm asking is that I talked to 2 students, and then I asked them what they lost most points in the free response section, and then asked them, do you know how to improve? They said, my teacher sent me the rubric. But they don't really know the rubric.
Yeah, and that becomes kind of an early struggle with students of how much time can you dedicate to addressing some of the early problems. So I do 2 things. The very first one, and I think a lot of AP teachers do this, I mean, really big when my students are writing on conferencing. So either them coming forward or pulling forward. Literally, my students wrote an essay 2 weeks ago on a Vietnamese American poet named Ocean Vuong and his work. And I think I walked around for 45 minutes while they were writing, students raising a hand of, just questions, approaches, because the ability to deal with that proactively rather than reactively, I find is really something that's helpful. So if you're in an AP class, please ask for help. It's a really, because it's the college level class, you kind of have to learn to advocate for yourself as well. But even on the back end of it, I always try to think when I'm doing essays, I might be looking for one particular skill because students, they really struggle when they get a piece of writing back and there's 15 comments on it. They're like, oh my gosh, what do I fix? Like there's red everywhere. So the first essay, I might be focusing really just on the introduction and the thesis, to get that kind of set up and so on and so forth. But even on the end of it, when they've gotten their comments and feedback, I say, please come talk to me, please be willing to have that conversation just because of the high level and the academic nature of it. If you have a really specific problem with your writing, it may not always be covered in class. So just self-advocacy, I find is really big at all kind of parts of that process.
Wow, thank you, Haya, for the sharing. Okay, how about Julian? about AP science subjects, in particularly AP physics, chemistry, and the bio.
Math, applied math. It's AP physics is definitely, all three of them kind of fall under this umbrella, but even more so AP physics than the other two. It's the first time that a student is going to encounter science that is this rigorous. It is a very, very massive jump from any science classes that they might have taken before. And needing to absorb all the information that they need for the test, having to be able to problem solve. It's another level of problem solving that a student probably hasn't encountered before either. It's a lot to take in for one class. And that's especially why the pass rate for AP Physics 1 is so much lower than a lot of the other APs, if not the lowest. That's up for debate, but it's a lot of, it's a skill set that needs to be developed in time for the AP test. And oftentimes it can be really hard to try and develop that entire skill set perfectly when you're only taking one AP. And so I will probably mention this later on as well, but taking, if the schedule allows and if their time allows, multiple AP classes at the same time lets them build up that skill set even quicker. And so on top of that, it's also knowing what they need to target in order to actually succeed on the test, because different topics will come to different students at different rates. The example I always like to give is the tension for AP Physics, where it's not a very intuitive concept, even though everything in science exists in the real world. The way that we learn them and the way that we do math with them, the way that we solve problems with them, often isn't nearly as intuitive as going outside and seeing these things in action. And so being able to also know what the student needs to focus on themselves individually is also really key. So sometimes certain things will just come naturally. I had a friend who was really confused as to why everybody was struggling with tension when he was like, wait, this is actually really easy. What's going on? And then I was that way with gravitation and also with buoyancy, to give another topic. But knowing what you're really good at, you can say, okay, I have this down. Now it's time for me to go back to this and do more practice with this. Because not everything needs to be studied equally across the board. You shouldn't give 20 minutes to something that needs 3, and you shouldn't give 20 minutes to something that needs an hour.
It's basically balance the load, right? And also actually how to choose an AP courses, that's also important. Yeah, probably we can talk about this after we finish the things that we plan to talk about today. Yeah, so that's for physics. Are you done? And Julian, do you have more to add?
I would say bio and chemistry are a little bit less heavy on the math and the problem solving aspect, but more so the ability to not necessarily memorize, but be able to link together these concepts that you learn about in a way that shows the connections that they do actually have. And that unlocks that deeper understanding that you need for the questions on the test and moving forward with the concept.
Okay, how about David? Most of actually students, our student population tend to struggle with the history subjects.
It's a labor of love. If you are not historian, which I actually am a historian, I'm not a social studies guy, so I have a love of history. I have a passion for it in my heart. I would say, as you said, most of the students coming to me from 70DU don't share that same passion. So it then makes it laborious, especially when you're talking about trying to get through 600 plus years of history in a year course. Now, when I say that, because it says how to best study for that, what I've come to in that is it's nearly impossible for the students to have mastery of the content in that amount of time. we can get close with a high bar and really pushing, right? If they develop good study habits and review habits, constantly reviewing, not just learning the new stuff, they have to be working on the past curriculum as they're learning the new curriculum. So I say that, but what I've come to on that multiple choice part, especially, is their thinking skills and their test taking strategies. How can they process information? And so we focus on that. That's what I say with them is, hey, you need to learn how to dissect a question like a close read, find out exactly what they're looking for. You need to know how to use the process of elimination to get yourself down the possible answers and go from there. So that's the content piece. I think if you move into the second struggle and challenge would be, as you said, the writing component. So not only do we have to teach the skills, right, that the College Board is looking for exactly, using the rubrics to do so and all of this, but then we have to go ahead and combine that with the content. So when you talk about challenging, that can be, I've had students come back and say, I had no idea of any of the content. And like, okay, well, that's going to make it challenging then when it comes to it. So, and you don't know what's coming at you as far as those questions. So that's challenging. So I would say the best study thing that I've come up with for my students, if they're looking for a 5, is this what I ask them what their goal is, right? And some of them like, I just want to pass. Okay, that's okay. 3, 4, 5 is okay. But if your goal is a 5, then you better sell out to becoming a intense review student for AP. Social studies, because without that, because there's so much content, I believe you'll find yourself in trouble.
Thank you, David. Okay, so it's my turn because I teach AP Math, including calculus, ABBC, and the stats. So I think other than content, basically, you really need to know the math. One thing I would really want to emphasize is about understanding. Probably that's the key difference between a college level course and a high school level course. And for maybe for algebra or even for geometry, some students have developed the habit of trying to memorize a lot of facts, memorizing a lot of formulas. I noticed that actually a lot of students, when they ask me how to answer a problem, I try to explain the thought. And then they tell me, is there formula that I can memorize so that I can answer this question, like a similar questions? I try to tell them that math is not about memorization, and it's about understanding. So if you're thinking that you just have to memorize a bunch of formulas, a bunch of facts, so that you can do well in calculus and the statistics, I think it's not gonna. Things will not go well. Okay, so you really focus on understanding. In college, they do ask for deeper understanding of the content, so that you can freely apply the knowledge to answer any problems, and not only like problems that you have seen before. And now, having said that, AP, I think that AP is still considered a standard test, and therefore you can have an idea of what kind of questions that you will be asked or in what context by studying a lot of past AP AP questions, and because College Board has released some of the past real tests. And also, you can find all their free response questions on their website. It's freely accessible, so students can study for those questions, so that at least you can get more familiar with the type of questions that you expected to answer. And then for the English and the history subjects, they give you the rubrics. Like even for STEM ones, they give you the rubrics of how your free response answers will be scored. So I think Kai also mentioned that since these are college level classes, they do expect, I think your high school teachers do expect you to be more self-driven, right? You cannot always wait for your teachers tell you what to do. You need to seek answers yourself. If your school teachers don't give you if you don't get all the information that you need from your teacher, you need to ask for information. So because by taking AP classes, we are considering as you as a college student. So we will raise the bar for how mature the expectations from the student. Okay, all right. Yeah, I know that we have received some question in the Q&A, so we will answer those questions after we're done with the webinar today. After we go through other topics. Okay, so another thing that students have asked us that whether student, so basically if your schools, your high schools do not offer certain AP subjects, can you still self-study? Meaning that you don't take the course at your school, but then still take the AP test, the national test in May. Well, assuming that you can find a spot to take the AP test, okay? The answer is yes. I mean, for most subjects. And there are some AP subjects that you cannot study by yourself. For example, AP Capstone, in AP Research, you cannot do that by yourself. But however, for most AP exams, the answer is yes. Okay, I think that's a good news for most students because you are not limited by what a high school offers. If you are really motivated, if you want to learn certain subjects, and you can study by, of course, finding the right materials to study, and then sign up to the key actually is final place where you can sign for taking the test. Yeah, so here's a link, and that you can go to, and the College Board actually noticed that's an issue for some students, especially like homeschool students, or the schools have limited resources for students. Okay, so how can 7EDU help students succeed in AP studies? And so our first one first show our student parents a comparison between 7EDU students, the performance of 7EDU students versus the national average basically in the last 2 years of AP tests. So here again, I just list some most popular AP subjects students take. So you can see that we are very proud to say that our students achieve significantly better than the national average, and at least 2 times better. Okay, even more in certain subjects. Okay, and then these are the courses that we offer to our students. There's a reason why we offer those courses. We offer some AP preview courses, usually during the summer, before the new school year starts, because for certain subjects, we think the students do need a preparation to basically mentally prepared or having preview some of the key concepts so that they are better prepared when the new school starts, when they start taking the new challenge. So especially for the topics that students tend to struggle. So we have the preview courses. And then for students who will take AP courses at school, right after the winter break, and starting from January, we offer AP Key Test Points Review course. The reason why we offer this Key Test Point Review course is because we noticed that most of students actually have forgotten what they learned in the first semester, especially after the wonderful winter break. And they come back, and then they are ready to learn new things, but they may have forgotten what they learned in the first semester. However, the AP test is cumulative. They don't just cover the second half, they cover the entire year curriculum. Therefore, we want to help students gradually pick up, review what they learned in the first semester, and basically the full semester, and they help them carry it through also with what they learned during the second semester until March time. And most likely students, if a school teacher is doing due diligence, the school teacher should have finished all the things that the subject needs covered by April, because the test is less than 1 month away. And this year, actually next year, AP test start from the first week of May, right? So you should give students at least a few weeks to start practicing the entire test. That's why we start offering AP mock test strategy review 1 month or a little over 1 month before the actual test. So it starts from March to May, depending on when the actual test occurs. Some tests will occur in the first week of May, some will occur in the second week of May. Okay, and also for students who really want to self-study for certain AP subjects, we offer courses to help those students. But I think by this time, and the students should have all signed up for the AP test. So you actually already know what AP test you should take. Okay, next year, so if students, ambitious students really want to go beyond what the school offers, you can consider self-studying some AP subjects and then take the test yourself. Okay, and just quickly go over what the key test points review courses will teach students. Like I said earlier, and in those courses, we'll help a student review important concepts covered in the standard AP tests. We will not only review the content, but we'll also review the strategies for answering the multiple choice and the free response questions. So here are the Spring 2023 small group AP key test points review courses that we will offer, including English language, literature, and composition, US history and chemistry, bio, physics 1, calculus A, B, BC, and statistics. And for the courses that are not listed here, we do have our wonderful instructors who can help students. But probably you can either form a study group by yourself, and we can help you, or we can take students on one-on-one basis. And for the mock test review strategy class, the goal for those AP mock test review courses is to make sure the students have the chance to take entire test. Most AP tests are 3 hours long, right? Some a little bit shorter, some longer, but it's a pretty long test. So we really want the students to have the experience of at least taking complete tests a couple of times. And in the mock test review class, we actually offer 5 tests for students to work on. And then after students have taken those tests, we will do a thorough review of students' mistakes as well as the test strategies. And then these are the subjects that we will offer in 2023. Again, English language, literature, and composition, and the microeconomics, biochemistry, physics, environmental science. Oh, sorry, I forgot you had the history subjects here. Yeah, so US history and computer science, calculus, and the stats. Okay, again, for the subjects not listed here, and the US history will be offered. And for other subjects, we do have one-on-one classes to help students. Okay, so here come to the Q&A session. I have seen several questions.
Yeah, there are 3 questions in the Q&A, and I believe there's 1 question in the chat.
Okay, let's start with the one in the chat because that's a very common question. Is it better to take 2 or 3 APs and aim for 5s, or to take 4 or 5 APs and end up 3s and a 4th? What looks better on the transcript? Okay, before I give my thought, does anyone in the panelists want to answer this question? So basically, it's a trade-off between the quantity and the quality, right?
Yeah.
If you take less, if you take more, and then you get better score, assuming that student have very limited time to prepare for the AP classes. So you want to share your thought?
I have a couple thoughts.
Okay.
But this is almost philosophical humanitarian or humanities type of answer. What's the goal is what I would say. So know your why. You know, am I taking AP US history and AP lit, but I know I'm a science major and I'm going to MIT, or that's what my goal is at least. You know, so I know the why as far as that is what I would say. What's the purpose that you have of doing it? And then as Mr. Kyle said earlier, I would also align that with what school I'm going to and checking what their acceptances are for those before I sign up for four classes, and they might not take the class if I get a 3 on it. So I would do my research with my counselor and make sure I understood that as well. Those are my 2 thoughts.
Well, thank you, David. Yeah, again, that's like a typical quality versus quantity. I think quality matters more than quantity because, in fact, if you end up with a lot of 3s, if you are going for a very highly competitive college, probably I will ask you to not report those 3s. So what's the point of taking those courses, right? And of course, when you pick AP courses, your goal is to demonstrate your knowledge or skill above a typical high school student, right? And therefore, when you take those AP courses, you really think you can do well. At least you will make your best effort to do well in those AP courses. Yeah. So of course, we want students to take a decent number of APs and also get high, like the very good scores in the AP courses. Okay, but if we have to do a trade-off, focus on the quality, not the quantity. Yeah, sure. I will send the college link, and maybe later on after we finish the Q&A questions, because I need to stop sharing screen. Okay, so we have some questions from the Q&A part. Among the STEM and the humanities language AP courses, would a student be reviewed differently by focusing on STEM APs? That speaks to passion, interest, and focus versus student who takes both STEM and the humanities language APs. I think Julian will be the best person to answer this question. And he graduated from IT, a typical STEM college, but he has background in both sides. So Julian, what do you think?
Yeah, as one of the only two people in the graduating class of 2021 with a joint humanities degree, I'm very biased towards both, but I will echo what Mr. David said in Know Your Goal. If you can successfully take both science and humanities APs at the same time, then you should 100% go for it. It makes you more well-rounded, which is a double-edged sword, because being more well-rounded is very good, but at the same time, you're not specializing towards something. And if you don't know what you want to specialize in, which I didn't until actually my third year in college, then that is perfectly acceptable. And that's actually what I did. I took AP Physics 1 and 2. I took AP World History, US History, Government, Microeconomics, English Literature, and English Language. And also to kind of go back to the idea of like reporting scores, the only score that I didn't sense at MIT was my AP Government score, because I didn't actually take that test. I found out that MIT wouldn't have accepted it anyways, and we were behind maybe like a full month for covering everything on the test. So almost nobody took it that year, but that's kind of besides the point. But if you want to be in STEM, I think it's very good to have some kind of foundational knowledge in humanities, and especially in English for writing skills.
Yeah, because I think there's a trend in college, and then they really don't want to, especially for those top tier colleges, they don't want to train technicians, right? They really want to train students who have big heart, not only knowing their like the tech field, but they also care about the humanities in general. And I believe MIT actually has a requirement for students, and they have to take at least 8 credits of humanity courses in order to graduate, right? Yeah, so that's
and it turned into me minoring in one of the humanities fields into a joint major in it. So I'm really glad that they required it.
Yeah, so if you can, okay, so basically, if it's not a heavy burden to you, so that you don't have time to do the things that you really want, if it's not that level, we really highly recommend students to be more balanced, more rounded with the courses that you take. Of course, you should take AP STEM courses, because this is the field that you want to major in. But on the other side, you really want to show that you are not just a nerdy kid, right? And you can write well, and you can analyze the historical passage well at the same time. Okay, and then do you have a chart about AP planning and the prerequisites of taking those APs? We don't have a chart because I think I have read through a lot of high schools, their course catalog. I noticed that each year a school can offer certain AP courses to their students, as not necessarily based on the course prerequisite, sometimes based on it's kind of limited by the resources they have for students. So I can just speak on the prerequisite, the technical kind of content progressive for the AP math courses, and I have other panelists to comment on the other AP subjects, whether they are sort of content prerequisites. So of course, for calculus, whether it's AB or BC, the prerequisite basically you have finished the pre-calculus. That's obvious, and because I don't think your school will even allow you to take AP calculus without having taken pre-calculus first. But for AP statistics, I know a lot of students, a lot of high schools only given seniors the opportunity to take AP stats. However, in terms of content prerequisite, I think students can start taking AP stats once you finish your algebra 2, not even pre-calculus, just algebra 2, because a lot of statistics concepts are kind of intuition. But you do have the algebra foundation in order to study AP stats. Okay, how about the other ones? Maybe we can start with Julian. How about AP chemistry, AP bio, and AP physics? Are there any content prerequisites for taking those AP subjects?
So there isn't, but it is somewhat recommended to have some background knowledge in either biochemistry before you take the AP version, because they cover very, very large amounts of content. And if you know any of it ahead of time and you have any of the understanding ahead of time, that makes it that much easier to score a 5 on the AP test and understand everything that needs to understand.
Yeah. How about the English? Is there any prerequisite for taking AP English?
Typically not for English, especially, College Board really in the last 5-6 years especially has made a really big move towards equity in their AP classes with being open enrollment. So like at my school, let's say if a student just took English 1 and English 2 standard, they can sign up for AP Lang their junior year. Or I've had students even that, because AP Lit, is a senior level course, they didn't even take AP Lang and they would jump right into AP Lit, as far as things go. But really, it's going to be contingent a lot as well upon your state and your district. So like I know that there's some districts in California. I teach an AP capstone program, which is like this 2-year kind of college prep type program. If you really get the chance to take it, I actually think it's one of the most valuable AP classes on my campus. And the first year is called Seminar. It's kind of like a deconstructive argument breakdown. It's got academic papers, and it's got presentations in it, and a lot. So I've heard of some counties in California that will use AP Seminar as the 10th grade English honors credit. So really, it's going to depend a lot upon what your district kind of allows versus doesn't allow, as far as what you can take and the prereqs of it. But generally, College Board leaves pretty open. But yeah, at the end of the day, going on, a lot of students will do that honors to AP track, with a lot of honors classes maybe early on, because they're just not as accessible when they're in the 9th and 10th grade. And then once they open up in 11th, 12th grade, they kind of shift into that. So definitely, at least just taking classes that get you used to a little more rigor early on helps a lot with English.
Okay, so David has to run. Do you have just 1 minute to comment on whether there are any prerequisites for taking AP history classes?
So thanks for coming tonight, everyone. As far as in the AP world, same thing that Mr. Kyle said. In my experience in the world of social studies, that we've made that move towards equity, and so with that we're seeing no prerequisites. So come on in and be ready to be challenged is what my message is. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, David has a class at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Yeah. Okay, thank you, David.
Bye.
Bye. I think to summarize, for English and social science classes, content-wise, there are no prerequisites, but really up to your high school to determine which year, during which year you are allowed or you're given the opportunity of taking the AP classes. And so more prerequisite, the content-wise prerequisite for the STEM courses, because I think STEM courses, the content-wise, knowledge-wise are more hierarchical. So you need to have the foundation knowledge in order to reach the AP level courses. Okay, I think we probably just have one question. My son's school does not allow students to take AP test when they didn't take courses to school. How can I register AP course out of school? I just sent a link in the chat box. So basically you can find this is called I think it's called the AP Ledger, where you can find your nearby high schools or some third-party institute that offer AP tests, and you have to call them one by one to make sure that they have spots for students outside your high school or outside your institute. if you do that earlier, probably you can still find spots, but probably you need to do that as soon as possible.
If you have any questions, you can email us at info@70du.org, and then there's the URL again for the courses. So if there's nothing else, I think that brings us to the end of the webinar. Does anyone else have anything you want to say? Bye.
Yeah, I've got one really quick comment. At the end of the day, for anybody that is listening, the best thing you can do, and what I always tell my students as far as colleges goes, is they're looking for two things. Did you take difficult classes that were available to you, and did you do well in them?
Yeah.
And if you can kind of meet those parameters, whether it's STEM classes, English classes, a mix of them, and so on and so forth, if you can do those things, you're going to be on the right track wherever you're headed.
It's what I did, so I can confirm.
Awesome.
Yeah. So for students who are applying for MIT or MIT to Dream School, and then work hard now. Yeah, and because it won't be easier when you go to MIT.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming. Make sure you check out our AP courses catalog for 2023, and we hope to see you in the spring. Thanks.